Introduction to
Yeah, Economics AS, Chapter 21. Introduction to the economy, to the measurements or the measures of economic performance. When we talk about economic performance, we're talking about how well the economy is doing. So it means we're going in depth between the micro and the macroeconomics. So the economy within, how things are within the economy and compared to the whole economy itself, like the individual market and the market as a whole. So I'm going to read further. Microeconomics and macroeconomics. Microeconomics is the study of individual markets within an economy. For instance, macroeconomics is concerned with individual market for goods or market for labor. So when you talk about microeconomy, it's just about the individual market, maybe the market for banking, the market for insurance, the market for transportation. That's an individual market within the economy. So the study of individual markets within the economy is micro. I think it's clear. Then we have macro. For macroeconomics, it's concerned with the study of the economy as a whole. So that means we're talking about the whole economy. That is what macro is about. So here this says, in contrast, macroeconomics is concerned with the study of the economy as a whole. For instance, macroeconomics consider the total value produced of goods and services in an economy. So that means the total output within the economy. The price level of the whole economy is studied. Total levels of employment and unemployment are examined. So here, it's the total of employment, total of unemployment. Whatever we need to study, we study it as a whole. That is what macroeconomics is talking about. So housing becomes a macroeconomic issue when, for instance, rises in house prices significantly affect the average level of all prices in the economy. So housing, there's a market for housing, which is microeconomic. But when it comes to housing issues affecting the economy as a whole, then it becomes macroeconomic. That's what they're saying here. That if prices start affecting the economy as a whole, then we won't see it as micro, we'll see it as macro. I think it's clear.
Yes.
So that's the difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics. So that takes us to national economic performance. One of the reasons why macroeconomics is useful is because it tells us something about the performance of the economy, of an economy. In particular, it allows economists to compare the economy today with the past. Is the economy doing better or worse than it was, say 10 years ago? So it also allows economists to compare different economies. Is the Japanese economy doing better than the US economy, or how does the UK compare with the average in Europe? So the performance of an economy does not only measure the performance or how well the economy is doing, it can also be compared with other economies. So you need to measure the economic performance to be able to know if you are doing well than previous years. That's the first point. And the second one here is that you can use it to compare the economy of Libya with the economy of America, or the economy of Libya with the economy of Nigeria. So these are reasons why we need economic performance. I think it's clear.
Yes.
Then an economy. What is an economy itself? An economy is a system that is trying to solve the basic economic problem. So we move further. An economy is a system that attempts to resolve the basic economic problems of scarce resources in a world of infinite ones. An economic system is a mechanism for deciding what is to be produced, how production is to take place, and who is to receive the benefits of that production. So with economic question, there goes allocation of resources, which is done through the economic system. So is it a planned economic system, or free market economic system, or a mixed economic system? So that's why they said an economy is a system that attempts to solve the basic economic problem. Why the economic system itself is who decides what within the economy. So if it is planned economy, it means if it is a planned economic system, it means resources allocation is done by government. If it's a free market, it means resources allocation is done through individuals or firms. But mostly we don't have a pure free market. It's a mixture. It's a combination of, and we have the mixed economy, which involves both the private sector and the public sector. I think you are getting in place.
Yes.
So when judging the performance of an economy, one of the criteria is to consider how much is being produced. The more that is produced, the better is usually considered the economic performance. Another criterion is whether resources are being fully used, that's fully utilization, and fully employed. The economy cannot be producing at its potential level of output. If there are high levels of unemployment, for instance, the economy cannot be producing at its potential level of output. So if resources are unemployed, if there are high levels of unemployed resources, it means the economy is inside the PPF or the PPC. The production possibility frontier is inside. So that means the economy, it's not reaching its potential. And if it's not reaching its potential, then there's no way we want to talk about increasing output. So resources have to be fully utilized for an economy to reach its potential. You get the point here?
Yes, sir.
So unemployment also brings that's the first thing. That's the first thing about unemployment. It reduces output. So another okay, unemployment also brings poverty to those out of work, and therefore affects the living standards of individuals. Another problem about unemployment or effect of unemployment is that it increases poverty. So those who are out of job, their level of income would fall. And if their level of income is falling, it means they cannot maintain a living standard. So their living standard is expected to fall either. So poverty would reduce output. Poverty would also reduce the living standard. Do you get the point there?
Mm-hmm.
So the rate at which prices rise is important too. High rates of prices rises high rates of price rises disrupt the performance of an economy. So price also needs to be stable. If prices are not stable, it affects the economy because it makes people not to be able to determine or decide what happens in the future. So there's always going to be a panic buy. Do you understand? So price stability is also important for an economy to check the performance of an economy. So the national economy must also avoid spending more than it can afford. So your expenses, the national expenditure must not exceed the national income. So you must not, because if national expenditure exceeds the national income, then you're going to have a deficit budget. So you must not spend more than what you can afford. You must not spend more than what you get. That's the point I'm making there. Do you get that?
Mm-hmm.
So over a long period of time, the value of what it buys from other economies must roughly equal what it sells. So that means export must equals to import, or export must be greater than import, not vice versa. Do you get the point?
Mm-hmm.
So in this, it is no different from a household that cannot overspend and build up debts in the long term. So the point is, we must never spend more than what we have. So for an economy to continue to have a positive balance of payments, it must have more export than import, or import equals to export. Is it clear?
Mm-hmm.
So from here we go to economic growth. So we'll continue with national economic performance. So economic growth. One of the ways to measure the performance of an economy is through its growth. So when we talk about economic growth, we're talking about increase in output. So let's read anyway. Economic growth. One of the key measures of national economic performance is the rate of change of output. The rate of change of output is basically economic growth. So if an economy grows, this is known as economic growth. If an economy grows by 2.5% per year, output will double roughly every 30 years. So if it grows by 7% per year, output will approximately double every 10 years. At growth rates of 10% per year, output will double every 7 years. So there is a standard definition of output based on the United Nations measure that is used by countries around the world to calculate their output. Using a standard definition allows output to be compared between countries and over time. This measure of output is called gross domestic product, GDP. So when we talk about an economic growth, so you can measure the performance of an economy through its GDP. So GDP is the measurement of a country's output. So whatever you have produced, so when you are calculating it, you use the gross domestic product. It gives you the monetary value of whatever your country has produced in terms of goods and services. Do you understand what GDP is here?
Yes.
And what economic growth is? So growth of 3% in GDP adjusted or for inflation in 1 year means that the output of the economy has increased by 3% over 12 months period. If GDP has been adjusted for inflation, then it is called the real GDP. So we have GDP, which is the nominal GDP, and the real GDP. We call it a nominal GDP because it does not have inflation adjusted with it. But when it comes to real GDP, it means it has been adjusted with inflation. Please get the point here.
Yes.
So we have the GDP, the nominal GDP, and the real GDP. We call it nominal, like I said earlier, because it does not have, or we call it nominal because it does not have any, we do not place inflation onto it. But when we have adjusted inflation with GDP, it becomes the real GDP. I think it's clear.
Yes, sir.
So an increase in real GDP or GDP at constant prices means output in the economy has risen. The economic growth rate is the rate of change in the real GDP. The economic growth rate measures how much output is changing, typically over the course of a year, and is expressed as a percentage. For example, Ireland economic growth rate was 26.29% in 2015. This means its output grew by 26.29% over the course of 2015. In contrast, but Brazil economic growth rate was negative 831 negative 3.85 in 2015. This means the output in Brazil was 3.8% lower in 2015 and then in 2015 its output contracted. So the term recession. So basically, when you talk about GDP, we measure it as a percentage of our output. That is what GDP is measured. I think it's clear.
Yes.
Then the term recession means that the economy has experienced negative economic growth over at least 2 consecutive quarters. So as you think more about economic growth, you should also have in mind that sometimes the economy will not be as well or as ideal as you think. So if it is not well, if the economy is not well, it's not ideal. That will bring about deflation, or it will bring about a loss of output. That is the point. So recession will reduce output. Workers will also lose their jobs. And if workers are losing their jobs, it means they won't be able to have any money to buy. So businesses that sell these bonuses might not be able that sell with. So with recession, the point is with recession, output is not going to increase. And if output is not increasing, then it means economic decline, not growth. Do you get the point or not? There's economic growth because output is increasing. But there's recession. If there's recession, that means there's a fall in economic activity for 2 consecutive quarters. So if there's fall in economic activities for 2 consecutive quarters, it means income level will fall. As a result of that, revenue for businesses would reduce. That's the point there. So economic growth is generally considered to be desirable because individuals prefer to consume more than fewer goods and services. This is based on the assumption that wants are infinite. High economic growth is, so the point is, every economy would want its economy to grow, because if it grows, it increases aggregate demand in the economy, so it's important to grow. So this is based on the assumption that wants are infinite. Higher economic growth is therefore better than, I said that. Higher economic growth is therefore better than the lower economic growth, which I talked about. Periods when the economy fails to grow at all, or output shrinks as in recession or depression, are periods when the economy is performing poorly. The depression years of the 1930s in Europe and America, and the Americas, for instance, were years when poverty increased and unemployed brought misery to millions of households. In contrast, boom is a period when the economy is doing particularly well, with economic growth above its long-run average cost. So there's depression as the economy is in decline, and there's a boom if the economy is able to, figure out itself and start witnessing more sales, more output. That is the boom. And at that point in time, the average cost is expected to increase. Unemployment. This is because, I think the point is clear about recession. There's recession which comes as a result of economic decline. So if there's economic decline, it's expected that output will fall. And if output is falling, that's recession. That is economic decline. So that's about that. Then we go to unemployment. Unemployment is also a measure of economic performance. I want to talk about unemployment. Unemployment is simply the numbers of workers who are willing and able to work but do not have a job.
Mm-hmm.
They are willing and able to work, but they cannot secure one job. That's what unemployment workers are. Do you get that?
Yes.
So unemployment is a major problem in society because it represents a waste of scarce resources. Output could be higher if the unemployed were in work. It also leads to poverty for those who are out of work. So high unemployment indicates poor national economic performance. Similarly, low employment indicates good national economic performance. So the first paragraph, unemployment, like I told you, is a number of workers making themselves, numbers of workers that are willing and able to work but could not secure a job. That is what unemployment is, right? Are you with me?
Yes.
So, if there's unemployment, output will definitely fall. That's the first thing. So if output is falling, do firms still have that? If output is falling, people will be out of job. So people losing job means they won't have the financial capability to buy things. Do you get the point here?
Yes.
So that will lead to poverty because they cannot afford the basic needs. So that will lead to poverty. Do you get it?
Yes.
So economic growth and unemployment tend to be linked. Fast-growing economies tend to have low unemployment rate. This is because more workers are needed to produce more goods and services. Low levels of economic growth tend to be associated with rising levels of unemployment. Over time, technological change allows an economy to produce more with fireworks. If there is little or no few workers, if there is little or no economic growth, workers are made redundant through technological progress, but fail to find new jobs in expanding industries. So if growth is negative and the economy goes into recession, firms will lay off workers and unemployment will rise. So based on this, there's unemployment, which means output can never increase because people are out of job. So people are out of job for different reasons. So people are out of job because the economy is not performing well. So if the economy is not performing well, firms will not be selling as they used to sell. They won't be making revenue as they used to make. So if they are not making revenue as they used to make, how will they be able to pay their workers?
That's when unemployment comes.
That is when they start laying off workers. As a result of that, unemployment would increase. You get it, please?
Yes, sir.
So fast economic growth then will tend to lead to net job creation. More jobs will be created than are lost through the changing structure of the economy. So another way of judging the performance of an economy is to consider its rate of job creation. So we can measure the performance of a country, of an economy or a country, with the numbers of jobs it created. Do you get it? So these are for economy, or these are for unemployment. So if unemployment is increasing, output will fall. Output will fall, level of income would fall. If unemployment is increasing, output will increase, prices will increase. Because, do you get it? If unemployment is reducing, output will increase, wage rate would increase. Then demand for goods and services will also increase. That would increase the revenue for firms. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So go to inflation, which is another factor that could be used to measure economic performance. What is inflation? Inflation is the increase in the average price of in an economy. That means a persistent rise in the price of goods and services is called inflation. You go today, it is $1. You get there tomorrow, it is 1.3. After tomorrow, 1.5. So the rate at which price becomes unstable brings about inflation. Do you get it or not, please?
I do.
So an inflation rate shows how much prices have changed compared to the same time in the previous year. A positive inflation rate means prices are rising over the year. A negative inflation means prices are falling over the year. Low positive inflation is generally considered to be better than high inflation. This is because inflation has a number of negative effects. So, inflation is as we said, is a persistent rise in the price of goods and services. But without inflation, businesses will not make profit. So that means low inflation is good for the economy, because if there's inflation, it means businesses will be able to make profit. Do you understand?
Yes.
So a negative inflation rate means prices are falling over the year, which is low. But positive inflation is generally considered to be better than high inflation. This is because inflation has a number of negative effects. For instance, rising prices mean that the value of what savings can buy falls. So the point is, the first implication about inflation is that it reduces the value of money. Do you get the point or not?
Yes.
Inflation reduces the value of money. So it simply means if I have 1,000 today, so the worth of 1,000 today is what it can buy today. So the 1,000 will still remain my 1,000 if I didn't buy anything today. But will I be able to sustain, or will I be able to, will I be able to still spend the same amount I'm saving to the same product after now? That is what the point is. So if you have 1,000 today, you check the value of what 1,000 could buy. So if the value of what 1,000 could buy today cannot be bought tomorrow, then there's inflation. Do you understand? That's how the value of money lost. Not that the money reduces. The money is still the same money you have. But what it can buy has reduced. That is the point I'm making there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand?
Yes.
So, okay, I think that another problem with inflation is that it disrupts knowledge of prices in the market. If there is a very high inflation, which with prices changing by the month, consumers often don't know what is reasonable price for an item when they come to buy it. Another problem about inflation is that it makes consumers not to be able to decide or determine the price for goods or services, because price keeps changing every now and then. So as soon as they go, they will find another price. Then they wouldn't know if to bargain for a lower price or to bargain for
A higher price.
So that's another problem about inflation. Do you get it?
Mm-hmm.
Then, okay. Today, inflation of a few percent is considered to be acceptable. When inflation starts to climb through the 5% barrier. So inflation must not exceed 5%. Okay? So if it exceeds high inflation, it's considered a high inflation. So inflation was a major problem for many countries, including the UK in the 1970s and 80s. In the UK, inflation reached 24.1%, which is too much. In 1975, for instance, today some countries in the industrialized world are faced with the opposite problem, deflation of falling price. Japan, for example, has experienced periods of deflation during the past 20 years. Deflation makes it more difficult for a country to grow its GDP, and deflation and recessions are linked. So there's deflation, which is percent fall in the price of goods and services. Deflation is not even ideal for an economy, because when there's deflation, it means prices are falling. Firms would not have any other choice than to reduce the number of workers, because they will be incurring more cost. Do you understand? Their profit will definitely fall based on the fact that revenue is falling. So that's about deflation. And for inflation, it means persistent rise in the price of goods and services.
Okay.
So deflation will be linked to recession, because recession is a fall in price of goods or services. Recession is a fall in the economic activity, or a decline in economic activity for 2 consecutive quarters.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get it? So deflation, because there's deflation, which means there's a fall in price of goods and services, the economy would not be in boom. There won't be boom. The economy would not be performing well, because everyone, the prices they are buying goods and services has fallen. So firms are not going to be making more revenue. As a result of that, they won't be able to invest. So because there's lack of investment, there will be recession. So that's why deflation is linked to recession.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get it?
Yes.
A persistent fall in prices would not give firms the motivation to produce or to invest in capital equipment. And if they're not investing in capital equipment, they won't be able to increase output. And if output is not increasing, there won't be economic growth. Is it clear?
Yes.
Balance of payment. Are you there? Are you there, please?
Yes.
So the next measurement that can be used to check the economic performance of a country is the balance of payments. Here they wrote, a household must pay its way. A household must pay its way in the world. If it spends more than it earns and take on debts, then at some point in the future it must repay the debts. Failure to repay debts can lead to a debt collector taking a household asset, and household not being able to borrow in the future. So the balance of payment, it talks about the amount of receipt, the receipts you get from trading with the whole world. Do you get balance of payment here?
Yes.
Your receipt the information you have based on the fact that you have traded with the whole world. That is what your balance of payment is. Do you get it?
Mm-hmm.
So a nation spending on foreign goods and services is called the value of its import. So we have, because it's balance of payment, which deals with the receipt or the transaction about other countries too. So it means we're talking about import and export. So there's import of goods, import of service, there's export of goods, export of service. That's what brings about balance of payment. Are you with me?
Yes.
So for export, exports are goods. For exports are goods that we sell to foreign customers. That is exportation. And import, these are goods purchased from foreign businesses. Do you understand the difference between export and import?
Yes.
Export, goods sold to foreign customers. Import, goods purchased from foreign businesses. Clear?
Yes.
So if the value of its import is greater than the value of its export, then this must be financed, either through borrowing or reducing savings held abroad. The economic performance of a country is healthy if over a period of time it exports. Over a period of time, its exports are either greater than or approximately equal to imports. However, if its imports are significantly greater than export, then it could face difficulties. So for balance of payment, we have import and export. Exports must exceed import, because if export is exceeding import, we are going to have surplus budget. But if import is exceeding surplus, then we're going to have a deficit budget.
Mm-hmm.
And a deficit budget is not good for the economy. Do you get the point there?
Yes.
So the balance of trade now. The balance of trade is a major part of current account and the balance of payment. So for the balance of payment, we have three items in the balance of payment. We have the current account, the capital account, the capital account, and what else do we have? The finance. So here we said the balance of trade records the value of goods and services sold abroad. That is export. And the value of goods and services bought from abroad, which is import. Where exports of goods and services are greater, the imports is said to be balance of trade surplus. I said that when the export of trade exceeds when the export of trade exceeds import of trade, it is called balance of trade surplus. And if the export of trade is lower than the import of trade, we could consider it as balance of trade deficit. I think it's clear.
Yes.
So deficit becomes a problem when foreign banks and other lenders refuse to lend any more money. So if there is deficit, you become non-attractive to foreign financiers. So you might not be able to get a loan, or you might not be able to get stuffs that you're supposed to get. Do you get the point here? So businesses witnessing, if the economy is witnessing, let's forget about the business now. If the economy is witnessing a deficit budget, it will be difficult for it to get or to secure a loan afterwards, because the business is not, the economy is not doing well. Do you understand?
Yes. So
these are called, deficits become a problem when foreign banks and other lenders refuse to lend more money. These are called, for instance, in Mexico in 1982 and Thailand in 1988. Countries have to respond to restore confidence. This is likely to involve cutting domestic spending, which leads to less demand for imports. Cutting domestic spending, though, also leads to reduced economic growth and rising unemployment. So the current account position of a country is an important indicator of performance. So the point here is about deficit. They said deficit becomes a problem. It's a problem because if there is deficit, you become less attractive to foreign businesses. That's the first point. But to reduce that, you have to say countries have to respond to restore confidence. This is likely to involve cutting domestic spending, though it also leads to reduced economic growth and rising unemployment. So if an economy is witnessing a deficit, it means domestic customers are buying more foreign goods. So to reduce that or to solve that, you have to ensure that there is cut in domestic spending. So you don't allow your citizens to buy more from imported goods. Do you understand the point here?
Yes.
So if domestic spending reduces, and that could also reduce economic growth and rising unemployment. So if domestic spending is reducing, it also affects the economy, because maybe most multinationals that are here, you won't be buying from them. And if you're not buying from multinationals or you're not importing, it means those businesses that rely on importation, those businesses that rely on importation would have to lay off their workers. You know, there are some businesses in this country, their own business is importation. They import. Now the government is stopping importation. What happens to them? They won't be able to work, right? So their workers or their employees will be laid off. So that could increase unemployment. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So that's about economic growth. Any question about it?
No.
So that ends measurement of economic performance.